Hello, Game Boys and Game Girls. I'm the Game Boy Guru, and welcome to Cleaning Carts, Episode 3. I have my rubbing alcohol, I have my Q-tips, and I'm ready to clean some carts and talk about some gaming-related stuff. So, first topic I wanted to talk about is gaming accessories. And I'm going to qualify that by saying anything that's either extra or superfluous stuff that comes with the game, or peripherals, things like that aren't necessarily related to a particular game, can be for a number of games. But I wanted to talk about accessories and different types, and then like my favorite accessories. The first game I'm going to be cleaning is Disney's Pocahontas while I'm speaking here. And so I wanted to talk about some of, I guess, a few examples of different accessories that you can collect for, as a part of your game collection or just in general. And so I'm talking about things like one of the things that I like to collect is game soundtracks. For those of you who have seen, I've done a couple of videos on part of my video game vinyl collection. And I have highlighted a handful of the releases I've got from Datadiscs and, shown those off and everything. But I also like to collect soundtrack CDs, game soundtrack CDs, not just vinyl albums. And so a lot of times when a game comes up that it's something I know I'm either going to like, or it's a genre that I really like, specifically shmups and things like that, or some RPGs, a lot of times I will make sure to pre-order or buy the special edition so that I get the soundtrack CD. Case in point, some of the stuff that I've purchased from Limited Run, I've gone ahead and bought the special editions so I can have the soundtrack. Things like Super Hydora, or Carol Blaster, or most recently Flint Hook and Mercenary Kings. I bought the treasure box, and that came with the soundtrack CDs. And so that's a good example of one. Another one would be limited edition controllers. Things like I have an Xbox 360 joystick that is a, Tekken 6, I think. And so the design of the stick has Tekken characters on it, and it's pretty cool artwork and has a neat look to it. That's a good example, or, that kind of a thing. Of course, you can use it with any game that supports D-pad or arcade stick control, but it was made to tie in with the game. Or another example would be just a more generic third-party control pad or joystick. I've, over the last couple of years specifically, have collected a number of third-party controllers. You find PlayStation 2 pads all the time, or at least I do, in Goodwill and pawn shops and places like that. So I picked up a number of third-party game pads that way, just because they seem to be prevalent, in the secondary market. Next, I'm going to be cleaning Mercenary Force for the Game Boy. Excellent game. Another category would be boxes, and by that I mean things like outer boxes for games, or game boxes in general. When I collect for Game Boy, I typically don't collect complete. I generally just go for card only, because boxes are expensive. I've got a handful of them here next to me that I've stumbled across or been able to get cheap, but generally speaking, I don't go for boxed Game Boy games. But if I stumble across a box in the wild for dirt cheap, I'll pick it up, because obviously since the price of game boxes is going up steadily because there are less and less of them in the wild, and because a lot of kids and parents threw them away, there are just way fewer boxes than there are games. Another example would be outer boxes for something like a TurboGrafx game, for example. The TurboGrafx games came in a specialized jewel case, but they also had an outer cardboard box that had, it was a little bit taller and had screenshots and the game description and all that stuff on the back. And so it wasn't just the jewel case, but it was also the outer box as well. Or things like console boxes. Not everyone, when they buy their game console, do they keep the box. Of all the consoles I've purchased in the last, say, 15 years, the only one that I didn't keep the box for, that I got a box for, well, two, I guess. The PlayStation 2, because the box that I got was just a generic GameStop aftermarket box. And then the other one was the Wii. And I think that's because it was in my basement and it got wet somehow and got ruined. So I didn't keep the box because it got ruined. But yeah, obviously you see all these boxes back here. I've got a bunch of them, and I enjoy that. I like to display them. It's a nice part of the history of it, especially things like my Sega Genesis box, since that was mine from when I was, 13, 14. And so, that's fun for me because it's a piece of my childhood that, I still have. And I still have my Genesis. And another example would be other special peripherals, things that are unique and interesting or specific to a particular series or a particular type of game. Things like the keyboard controller, for example, that was used with Star Raiders. But Star Raiders wasn't the only game that used it. It came in this box as a kind of a package deal, but there were other, the basic programming used this, and there were a handful of other games that used the keyboard controller as an accessory. So that's just one example. There are others that are things like the paddle controls for the Atari 2600. I don't know if the original 2600 system came with paddles or if it just came with the joysticks. But for example, my set that I got was 2 joysticks and the console and Pac-Man in the box. And that was it. That was the bundle that I got. And so, for that kind of a thing, you're not always going to have that extra controller. And so, of course, not all the games use the paddles, but there are quite a few that do. Next up is Star Wars: The Empire Strikes Back. So that's another example of the kinds of things that, different types of accessories to collect. Now, for me, personally, I would have to say that probably my favorite type of accessory or gaming-related item to collect, and I sort of gave it away earlier, but it's probably game soundtracks, just because there's so many possibilities. There's so many awesome releases, especially now that stuff is getting released on vinyl, and I'll be showing off more of those in the coming months as we go along. I'll create a video here and there to show off some of those releases because I have more, and I'll continue to buy more. And I also want to show off some of the game soundtrack CDs that I have. Some of them that I've purchased that have been part of, a lot of them have been part of the collector's edition or limited edition or what have you of the game that I've purchased, and so it's just part of buying that game. But it's still something that I've done specifically, generally speaking, because I wanted to have the soundtrack. You know, a good example of that would be Otomedius. Otomedius Excellent on, is that right? Yeah, Otomedius Excellent on the Xbox 360. The art book is cool, don't get me wrong. It's a nice item. And, you know, the extra packaging and stuff is fun. It's kind of like a foil cover or what have you. And that I don't care about the blow-up waifu deal or whatever it is. I just don't care. But the soundtrack CD is something that I wanted because Konami has historically been really good in terms of music for their games, and specifically the Gradius and related series. So Gradius, Parodius, Twinbee, etc. And it did not disappoint. Matter of fact, I haven't even played the game yet because I've been busy with lots of other shmups and other games in my backlog. But I spun that CD last year a ton in the car, to and from work and just, you know, driving all around. And so I played that a lot. Same thing with Raiden 4. You know, I bought the Xbox 360. There was I guess there was a GameStop exclusive that had the soundtrack CD included with it. So when I bought it, of course I bought it well after its original retail life. Whoops, I dropped a screw. And so I didn't, uh-oh, where did it go? So I didn't buy it from GameStop. I actually ordered it from Amazon, but I made sure to check the listing and see from the seller that I was buying it from that it had the music CD, and it did, and I was glad it did because it's a great soundtrack, and I listened to it a ton. So once again, you know, that's one of those things where I made sure to buy the version that came with the soundtrack because that's what I wanted. Here we go. So that's probably my favorite accessory or gaming related item. Now, if you want to talk peripherals, my favorite peripheral or accessory to buy at this point would have to be third-party control pads. And that's not to say I don't like buying first-party pads, because I do. And in fact, generally speaking, first-party pads are what I like to use most of the time. But I like buying third-party control pads because I like to compare. And I like to see, you know, everybody's seen the meme about going to a friend's house and getting relegated to the lousy third-party control pad or the Mad Catz controller or whatever it was that the friend didn't use, or, you know, playing with an older sibling, that kind of a thing, and ending up with the junky controller because older brother or sister wanted to use the nice controller rather than being nice to you as the younger sibling or what have you, and letting you, you know, giving you the better controller. But it's fun for me. One of the things that I enjoy is to actually try them out and play with them and see, you know, how it works. You know, last month when I was playing through 1942 on the Sega Saturn, the first several times that I played it, I played using an Interact Sega Saturn pad, not with the official pad. Then I moved to the official pad and tried that a few times, then to the official Sega Saturn joystick, Sega's joystick, I tried the Interact joystick I have, and that stick has some issues. I'm probably going to have to look at that. And then eventually I moved back to the standard Sega Saturn Model 2 pad. But I tried it first on that Interact pad because I wanted to see how it compared. And, I enjoy doing things like that, trying out third-party controllers. Just to see how they play, how they feel, what they're capable of, or what it's like to use them. And so I don't know why, but I find that fun and interesting. So that's me. Now, as far as least favorite accessories to collect, I've got a few examples. For me, one of my least favorite things to collect is large peripherals. And I'm talking about things like big racing wheels, dance pads, those kinds of things. Stuff that generally takes up a lot of room. Now, I've got a few of those things, and I've enjoyed picking them up. It's not to say that I don't still enjoy grabbing that stuff, because I do. But in terms of ranking favorite to least favorite, that would be among my least favorite things to collect, just because they take up more room, and because they just don't. It's not something I'm going to use as often, because number one, I've mentioned on the channel before, but I'm not very good at racing games. So a racing wheel specifically is not something I'm going to get a lot of use out of. Same thing with a dance pad. I'm not going to spend hours playing DDR or something like that, although perhaps I should. Might drop a couple pounds faster, but that's not the kind of game that I want to spend a whole lot of time playing. So for me, collecting racing wheels or that kind of a thing, because of the sheer size of it, is just not something that I enjoy collecting as much as something like a smaller joystick or a gamepad that I can throw in a tub or into one of my hanging shoe bag things. Oops. And so that's one of those accessory types that I'm a little bit less enthusiastic about. Again, mostly because of the sheer size and the fact that I'm not going to use them quite as often. Another one is the Toys to Life stuff. And that encompasses Amiibo, Skylanders, Disney Infinity. There's that new Starlink game, which I actually am kind of interested in and want to check out. But stuff like that. Oh, that was Aladdin, by the way. I forgot to show that off. And this is Jimmy Connors Tennis. And I know this is one of the supposedly more rare games for the Game Boy. I happened to pick this up dirt cheap, like $5 at a pawn shop a couple of years ago. So, yeah. Anyway, generally the Toys to Life. Now, I do have some of them. Of course, Zagnorch, who will probably give me a hard time if he watches this video, because he's hooked me up with some Skylanders figures, and they're cool, don't get me wrong, but, I'm always torn with stuff like that as to whether or not to take it out of the box. And I think my general consensus right now is that I don't want to take this stuff out of the box. Same with my Amiibo. I only have a handful of Amiibo, and I've got the initial Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild set that came out, because I just love Breath of the Wild. I want to get the Heroes set as well. I didn't pick those up, and I'm hoping that it's not too late, but anything Breath of the Wild I'd like to grab. And also I have the Bayonetta 2 Amiibo, because I really like Bayonetta. But otherwise, I haven't invested in much of that. I thought about maybe getting Samus or something cool like that, but I just haven't done that yet because it's an expensive proposition. And again, if I'm not going to use the figures and they're going to stay in box, they're cool collectibles to have on the shelf and fun to look at and whatnot, but it's not... It's an area that I want to be careful about and not invest an inordinate amount of money into, because I'm not going to actually be using them for their intended purpose. They're just going to sit on the shelf and look pretty. So one of the reasons that it's less of a favorite is because I don't want to fall into the trap that some of the other collectors have fallen into, which is to just buy up all the amiibo as they come out. I just can't afford to do that. I would rather focus on the games, because that's where my interest lies, is the games themselves. Having said that, there probably will be other amiibo I'll be interested in. I kind of wanted to grab the Mega Man 11 Collector's Edition from GameStop because of the amiibo. I ended up not doing that, but a Mega Man amiibo would still be pretty cool. Something like that. So, I'm not gonna go super out of my way to collect amiibo, and go down that rabbit hole. But it is something that I'm, cautiously watching and thinking about. Wow, this is going to need a lot of residue on the back here from a sticker, so I'll need to go a little bit more gangbusters on that at some point. So yeah, Toys to Life stuff in general, that's not a rabbit hole I want to jump down too far. The Skylander stuff that Zagnorch has hooked me up with has all been pretty cool stuff, and it's all been very reasonably priced, and that's one of the reasons why I've done that. But again, it's not an area that I want to go super deep into. This is Arcade Classics 2, Centipede and Millipede. The other least favorite thing that I like to collect would be accessories that are specific to one or two games. So things like a notorious example would be the Arkanoid controller on the NES. As far as I know, there are no other games on the system that are compatible with that controller. It's just a little paddle controller, similar to an Atari 2600 paddle, and nothing else, from what I understand, uses that paddle. So you can play it with the standard pad, and I did as a kid. One of my friends had a copy of Arkanoid that we used to play, but he never had the paddle controller, so we always played it with just the standard NES pads. And that's one of those that now it's become prohibitively expensive to grab it, and I think it's probably more expensive now than almost the game itself when it was brand new. So it's kind of lame, and that kind of a thing. Or another thing like that would be the microphone that you use for Seaman on the Dreamcast to talk to the fish creature and all of that. That's another one that is a little bit more specialized, and it's specific to that game. I don't know if there are any other Dreamcast games that use that, but that would be another one that I probably wouldn't invest in unless I was buying a complete copy of the game with the full outer box and everything that included it, because otherwise I probably wouldn't want to seek it out or spend the money on it. Things like that. Or there's a special peripheral for the Wii there's a Tony Hawk game, and I don't remember which one it is, but it's a special skateboard peripheral that you can stand on, and I think it does something similar to the Wii Fit board, where it sort of measures pressure and different things like that, and angle that the pressure is coming down on, so that you can kind of, simulate, leaning forward and back on the skateboard and that kind of a thing. But I'm just not interested in those specialized peripherals like that, because it's maybe good for 1 or 2 games, and then beyond that, what is it going to do? It's going to sit in the closet, or it's going to sit on a shelf and look nice, but otherwise it's not going to get used very much. So I just don't have a lot of interest in collecting stuff like that. Now, in terms of stuff that I'm looking for, I know I mentioned Amiibo as one that is one of my least favorites, but I am looking for at least one, and that is the original Bayonetta Amiibo, which was a Best Buy exclusive that I was not aware of until well after its retail time had come and gone, and now it is much more expensive. So if anyone has one that they're looking to get rid of and not gouge me on the price for, hit me up, because I'm probably going to be interested in maybe making a deal on that. Something else that I'm looking for is, and this is one of those silly things that's just me. Oh, this is Arcade Classics 4 with Defender and Joust. This is just me being silly, but something that I'm looking for is the Kaneko branded video glove that was originally available as a mail-in or a mail order deal from when you bought the game Airbuster for the Sega Genesis, which is a port of the game Aeroblasters. And I saw magazine ads for it, and it's on the box right on the front there that you can send away and pay for the video glove. And I don't remember if it was just that you had to pay shipping and handling and sending the coupon, or if you had to pay some amount of money for the glove above and beyond that. But anyway, you don't see them come up on eBay very much. I don't know how many people actually sent off for that. I don't know that Airbuster was an exceedingly well-selling game, so I don't know how many of those gloves are actually floating around, but it would be fun to have that. Another thing that I'm really looking for is, and I'll qualify by this by saying, I'm looking for any and all Game Boy accessories I can get my hands on, obviously, since I'm covering Game Boy stuff, but the one specifically that I'm looking for the most is the Handy Boy. But what I want is a complete in-box Handy Boy. I'd like to be able to kind of do a bit of a retro unboxing, and then also, take a look at it, since that's probably the most famous of the big unwieldy Game Boy accessories from back at that time. It would be interesting to me to kind of take a look at it with a bit of a look-back perspective and think about what it was like at that time, and then look at it as far as, how can we look at this now and see either how it was good, how it was bad, what maybe the manufacturer could or should have done differently with it, that kind of a thing. So yeah, I'm looking for any kind of Game Boy accessories really, but the Handy Boy specifically is one that I want to get complete in box, and really try to do a bit of a retrospective on it as part of the channel. Well, that's all I've got today for you. Let me know what you think. Tell me about your favorite gaming accessories to collect, or your least favorite, and why. And then, is there anything you're looking for? Maybe other people can look through the comments and see what you're looking for, and maybe they've got an extra one that they can hook you up with. Let's discuss in the comments below. Make sure you follow me on Twitter at GameBoyGuru. I'll have a link in the description below to my blog where you can read all my Game Boy game reviews. That is GameBoyGuru.blogspot.com. Also, make sure you check out Nira and his channel. He provided the Super Mario Land overworld music that I use as the intro for my videos, and he has a bunch of other great chiptune and game music covers as well, so make sure you go check those out. As always, thanks for watching, thanks for playing, and game on.